My biggest mistake in high school was agreeing to take an AP physics class with the seniors. I was a rising sophomore at the time, so when I walked into a class full of kids much older than I was, the teacher sat me next to the only other person there that was close to my age. He was a freshman, and his name was Josh. Josh was one of those people who gave off weird vibes. He had a sloppily shaven head, empty eyes, and ate warm Skittles in class. He was short but mean-looking, and the instant I sat down next to him, the teacher ordered us to exchange numbers and tried to make us start talking. For some reason, I really did not want to talk to him. I wasn't trying to be an a-hole, but he just kinda scared me. Sitting next to him felt like what I can only describe as sitting next to a hungry dog whilst you're holding a piece of chicken. It felt like any second he would jump on me, even though he was a good 6 inches shorter than me. It really freaked me out that he had my phone number and name. Even though I didn't know the kid, I had a feeling that him knowing literally anything about me was not good. Luckily, he didn't talk to me for over a week, and after some time, I thought I was being overly judgmental. Maybe he was just a socially awkward kid. One day, about 3 weeks after I started the class with him, he finally talked to me. He asked something like, "You're the girl that drives the F-150, right?" Reluctantly, I said, "Yeah." He told me that cars were a hobby of his, and he had seen me driving around and really liked my truck. Although I was a bit caught off guard, he seemed very innocent and nice, and we kind of started to become friends after that. He started texting me a lot after school, asking me stuff about myself and sharing quite a bit about himself too. Like I said, he seemed very innocent, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that I shouldn't tell him anything about myself, and that I shouldn't be talking to him. The average conversation continued for a month or so, until one day I came home from work. I worked at a restaurant about 20 minutes away from my house, so when I turned off my phone to drive to work, I honestly wouldn't turn it back on until I drove back home. Phones were prohibited at the restaurant after all. One weekend I came home at 12 a.m. after doing closing shift, and he had sent me several odd texts. They all consisted of "I love yous," "I want to take you to homecoming," and "please be my girlfriend." They all rubbed me the wrong way. The way he worded it didn't really seem to me to be asking, as much as he was demanding me to have a relationship with him that I just wasn't comfortable with. I ultimately friend-zoned him and told him I was going to bed. His response was a flat no. Just no. It freaked me the F out, and made me really not want to go to class on Monday, but I had no choice. I had to go. He didn't text me for the rest of the weekend, and when I sulked my way into class on Monday, he gave me the same hungry dog stare from day one. I ignored him the whole class. I practically ran out when the bell rang, and when I got to my car in the student parking lot, I saw him watching me drive away from the sidewalk. It freaked me out more than I'd like to admit, so I called one of my guy friends and asked him if I could drive him home from school, just so I'd feel safer until creepy Josh would start being less creepy. He agreed, and we made an arrangement there and then. A lot of people thought I was overreacting, but I just knew in my gut that I needed someone in the car with me, and this guy friend seemed like the right one. When I came home from work at 10ish Monday night, I opened up my phone and saw more texts from Josh. This time they were much more predatory than the night before, as that night they were detailing how he would like me to perform sexual acts on him. I foolishly allowed this to continue on for another couple of weeks, still feeling uncomfortable in class, when it finally hit a breaking point. Josh started sending me texts about how if I wouldn't love him, he had to die. At that point I decided it was time to involve the dean, but she did literally nothing. She just basically explained that Josh was special needs, and to cut him some slack, despite the predatory tone of the messages. She told me she would talk to him about it, but not to be worried, because he likely wouldn't do anything. I was infuriated. I told my dad, who told his army of Italian brothers, who all decided they were going to keep an eye on him. The creepy messages didn't get any worse. Eventually, they stopped altogether after I blocked his number. But that was when the real creepy shit started. The cameras outside our house would keep picking up a person at night, someone very similar looking to Josh. This person was always knocking on the windows, peering into my car, so my dad called the cops. They were actually pretty awesome and kept a lookout on my house for a while to deter these nightly visits. With a cop outside at night, the visits stopped, and my work started getting calls from Josh asking when I was working. The manager ended up alerting security, who threatened him to stop calling. Then Josh started frequenting the restaurant where I worked every day. He'd leave paper cranes on the table saying, "I love you, my name," and "My new boyfriend's name isn't good for you. I am." He started following me to class, to my car, to work, even though I pretended he wasn't there and was still driving my 6'3" guy friend home. I refused to leave my house without a group of people and debated skipping prom altogether. I was basically becoming a hermit because he made me feel so unsafe anywhere. Eventually, my dad decided a restraining order would be a good idea. I did get one granted so he couldn't walk near me or contact me for 5 years. Thankfully, this finally caused the year-long nightmare to stop. I didn't see Josh again until my senior year, when I was walking down the hall with my friends and he saw me coming. He stopped in his tracks and slowly watched me walk past him with that same hungry dog look that had initially scared me the day I met him. You're probably wondering why he never got in any trouble when I contacted the dean and the police. Well, where I live, there's a bunch of laws that make it exponentially harder for someone with special needs to be punished for creepy behavior, even though they're just as capable to execute their behavior as the average person. The last time I saw Josh was on graduation, when I could have sworn he was in one of the front rows waiting for me to get my diploma. Although it's possible he was there for someone else, a part of me thinks that he was there for me. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that this can happen to anyone. I never thought this would happen to me, until it did. It robbed me of my safety, high school experience, and peace of mind. Always trust your instincts on someone. You are not required to be nice to anyone who makes you uncomfortable. That leads to me now. I'm happy, in a serious relationship with an awesome guy, and in a weird way, I'm glad I was able to learn from this whole experience. In early 2007, I was freshly 18 and newly married, living in Fort Polk, Louisiana, while my husband was training at Fort Benning. I was born and raised in Alaska, so living in the continental U.S. was a vastly new experience for me. My husband had a weekend off, though he was not allowed to leave the base, so we bought a Greyhound bus ticket for me to visit him and meet the soldiers he had become friends with. I'd never been on a Greyhound bus before, but I was excited to drive through the South and see all these new places, have my own little adventure. Sure, plenty of creeps bothered me on the bus and at the stations, but I still had interesting conversations. I met a lot of new people and generally enjoyed the experience. Regardless of time, each station we stopped at was open and offered food, outlets for charging, and bathrooms. So of course, when we arrived in Columbus, Georgia at about 2 a.m., I expected the station to be open, but it wasn't. Everyone else who ended their journey there had a ride waiting for them, and suddenly I was completely alone, outside of a locked building in the middle of downtown Columbus. It was pitch black, and I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. My phone was nearly dead from the last long leg of travel. I thought about walking to a gas station, but I had no idea which direction to go in, and there were no nearby lit buildings. I truly expected the station to be open, thinking I would stay there for a bit while my phone charged and I had something to eat, and maybe I could have access to a phone book so I could call a cab. All I had to go off of was an old sign hanging on the side of the building with incomplete phone numbers for taxi companies. The numbers had faded, been scraped off, or had been defaced. There was only one complete phone number, and it was handwritten in Sharpie at the top of the list. Better than nothing, right? Wrong. I called the number, and a man answered, casual and sleepy, asking who I was. I apologized, explaining I was trying to call a cab, when the guy perked up immediately. "Oh yeah, that's me. I'm on my way." My phone died 10 minutes after I made the call. It was another 15 minutes before the guy showed up in a traditional-looking yellow taxi. I noticed that the cab wasn't marked. No logo, number, rates, anything. But it had that little taxi light thing on the top, and in my naive young mind, that made it totally legit. He waved me over. I hopped in and asked him if he could take me to Fort Benning, finally receiving some relief. The doors auto-locked, and I'll never forget the first thing he said to me. He was silent until we got onto a main road, and then he said, "Did you really think it was a good idea to call a number written in Sharpie?" I froze. In retrospect, no, it was not the greatest idea I've ever had, but I had so few options, and I didn't want to be stranded in the middle of a huge foreign city in the middle of the night. I don't know what else I could have done. After a minute, I tried to laugh it off, and hoped he didn't notice that I was shaking. I reached for my phone before remembering it was dead, and I realized that if something happened to me, nobody would ever know I had even made it to Georgia. Staring at me in the rearview mirror, the driver told me what was going to happen. "There's no use getting to Benning this early. The Post Hotel isn't even open. Drive around with me for a while. Hang out. I won't even charge you." I told him no thanks. I really needed to get to Fort Benning right away. "Nah," he said, and that was that. We drove to a worn-down apartment complex, where he told me he was picking up a regular to keep me company. I didn't reply. What could I even say? I wasn't raised religious, but I was praying to God for some kind of miracle. Out came a woman who looked a bit like a cliché prostitute. Tube top, mini skirt, smudged mascara and an unlit cigarette hanging from her lips. Short but ratty bleached hair, pockmarked face, cheap purse. I have no idea who or what she truly was, but she hopped in the front passenger seat and lit up her cigarette. She turned around to look at me. "Don't worry, he's cool. We're cool." That definitely helped. I had never considered jumping from a moving vehicle before, but even if I wanted to, the back doors were child safety locked and I couldn't even open them. Trust me, I tried multiple times. I was like a caged animal just waiting to die. I felt so stupid, so foolish. Sitting in the back seat of the cab, no idea what to do, and no idea what was going to happen to me. I kept trying to rationalize the situation, downplaying it in my mind. I was too afraid and frozen to actually do anything anyway. As we were driving around, the girl was telling me about the driver, how he was ex-military and had just started this cab business, what a down-to-earth and fun guy he was, and how lucky I was to be picked up by him, how I was cute and young, and everything was cool. Her words were a bit slurred, and I knew she was either drunk or high on something. I didn't really want to know what. We pulled up outside a small blue house sometime later, about an hour before the break of dawn. The driver told the girl to keep an eye on me while he went inside. I'm in full-blown panic mode, the suspense of it all making it so much worse. The girl offered me a cigarette to calm my nerves. I wasn't a smoker, but I said yes. She got out of the cab and opened my door, stumbling a bit before sitting on the curb and lighting another cigarette. She lit mine as I sat next to her, and I started thinking about whether or not I could outrun her with my heavy backpack, how long the driver would be inside for. Without me prompting, the girl told me the driver was inside showering in preparation. I asked what he would have been showering and preparing for, but she just kept repeating how he was cool, how much fun we were going to have, and how cute I was. Then she said, Ranger cab, because he was like a ranger or something. Or maybe that was his dad. He's a good-looking guy, military muscles. God finally answered my prayer, when suddenly the girl slumped over and passed out in the grass. I saw the track marks on her arms. I guessed maybe she'd done heroin. Apparently, the driver was inside taking a shower, and wasn't about to come back in the next few moments, so I grabbed my backpack and I ran like hell. I don't remember exactly what happened after I started running. I know I took off as fast as my feet would carry me, and that I didn't dare stop to catch my breath. One minute I was sprinting for my life, lungs on fire, and then I was trudging along with tears in my eyes as I walked through the Fort Benning gate with my military spouse ID, asking how to get to the base hotel. Honestly, I wish I knew how I got there. I was in deep survival mode, and didn't stop to process any of it until I made it to my room. I don't know if someone gave me a ride, if I followed a map, or what. I've never blocked out a memory like that before, or ever again. I told my husband everything when I finally saw him. He didn't believe me. I probably wouldn't have believed me either. His lack of trust made me think no one would take me seriously, so I never ended up going to the police. I still had the number I dialed saved in my call history. I knew the girl had called the company Ranger Cab. What I didn't have was the confidence or the support I needed to report it. Sometimes I think back to that day and wonder what would have happened if the girl didn't let me out of the cab, if she hadn't just passed out on the ground, if the driver never stopped for a shower. It's the one mystery I'll never need an answer to. This happened yesterday, and before anyone says anything, yes, I know that this is stupid. I had just gotten home from work at around 9 p.m. and had just barely had time to get my shoes off when I got a phone call from some number I didn't recognize. I'm searching for new jobs at the moment, so I thought that it might be one of the places that I was applying to calling me back. I pick it up, and it's some man who says he's with some kind of third-party detention center, which, as he explained it, was for low-risk inmates that were sent there whenever the local jails were busy or filled. That should have set off a nice big red flag for me, but for whatever reason it made sense in my tired brain. I'm getting ready to tell this guy I'm not interested in making a donation or anything like that, when he asks, "Is this my full name?" I confirm, and he says they're holding my boyfriend at this center, saying my boyfriend's full name and giving a dead-on description of him. I ask what's going on, since my boyfriend is supposed to be at work right now. And the guy on the other end provides an explanation. He says that my boyfriend had struck a pregnant woman with his car on his way to work and was 4 times the legal limit for blood alcohol. He said the woman was in critical condition and that my boyfriend had broken a few ribs and his nose in the incident. I'm freaking out at this point and ask if I can speak to my boyfriend, which the man obliges. I'm put on hold for a minute or two before my boyfriend picks up the line. This person on the other end was panicking, saying how it wasn't his fault, and begged me not to tell his parents, again using my full name. It didn't particularly sound like my boyfriend, but I figured it was because of the broken nose he supposedly had. His tone really helped to sell it, because it all sounded so legitimate. The man from before comes back on the line before I can ask any questions, and explains that they had to sedate my boyfriend since he had begun to panic and hyperventilate, something that I was starting to relate to more and more by the second. The man on the other end tells me that I should come right away, and that the bail is set at $2,000 cash only. I stupidly tell him that I don't have that much. I maybe have half of that. He tells me that's fine, and that I can work something out with the front office once I get there. Just to bring what I have. It seems like he's trying to calm me down. He's giving me the address, and I can barely hold the pen because my hands are shaking so badly. I'm very poorly trying to hold back my tears. All of a sudden, the door opens up, and in walks my boyfriend, completely normal looking, no broken nose, but more than a little confused as to why I'm suddenly crying. I'm still on the phone with the man, and ask him what the fuck he thinks he's doing, telling him how my boyfriend just walked in. The man immediately hangs up. I tried calling back a few times, but it went directly to voicemail. Find out the power to the bar my boyfriend works at had gone out, so his boss had sent everyone home early. I'd never been so grateful for a power outage. My boyfriend slept on the couch to keep watch, but unfortunately I couldn't sleep at all that night. So I decided to look up the name of the organization the man had said he worked for. Big surprise, that turned up nothing. Then I looked up the address he had given me on Google Maps, only to see that it was some random abandoned strip mall in the middle of a very sketchy hour, and that it was about an hour and a half out of town. What really freaked me out about this whole thing was that the guy knew my number, both me and my boyfriend's names, but didn't sound like anyone we had ever met before. I have no idea what would have been waiting for me there, but I'm counting my lucky stars right now. So to the guy who wanted to meet me for God knows what at the sketchy-ass strip mall, let's not meet. I'm going to try and keep this short, as I tend to ramble and over-explain, but still, here we go. I, 18 and male, moved from my hometown in with my mom about a year ago, into a farmhouse pretty much in the middle of nowhere, on the east side of Australia. It was at the very end of a 7-kilometer-long driveway that had about 2 other houses on it, both with elderly couples in them. It was a 30-minute drive from the nearest town, which is very small, only having about 1,000 people living there. I'd feel really uncomfortable some nights when I was outside having a cigarette. The old feel like you're being watched. Occasionally I would wake up and hear footsteps outside that I was sure did not sound like the sheep and rams that were right near our place. I have a history of drug abuse, and am quite a paranoid person because of it, so I tried to rationalize it all away by telling myself I was just being paranoid. One night I woke up at 3 a.m. and needed to take a piss. When I looked out my bedroom window, I very briefly saw a flash of light, like it had come off of a torch or a phone. Seeing as though we lived in the middle of fucking nowhere, this freaked me out a lot. I stayed up all the way until morning, listening and looking out, but I heard nothing. Maybe a week later, my stepdad's ride-on lawnmower had its tires slashed. My stepdad blamed it on me, but I didn't care, because it just further reinforced the idea that there was somebody lurking around my property. My mom knows I wouldn't do something like that, and instead thought the neighbor had done it. I always chatted with the neighbor when I went for walks. I liked him, and I really doubted he would have done something like that, let alone being able to walk that far. He was quite old, and if he came in a vehicle late at night, we would have all heard it. The stepdad ended up moving out eventually, because, man, I don't want to get too personal. He's a drinker, and I witnessed him on the verge of being violent with my mom, so I intervened and fucked him up a little. He moved out the next day, and we haven't seen him since, thankfully. And no, the things that happened after he was gone were 100% not him. It wasn't even considered to us that it could be him, because it just wasn't. With him gone, and it being only me, my mom, and my 3-year-old sister there, considering we can't legally own a gun in Australia, and the cops would take a good hour to get out to us if we needed them, I got increasingly paranoid about the things that had been going on. I felt that I needed to be protective of them. Some nights I would stay up very late, and before going to sleep I would turn off all the lights and walk around silently, looking out the windows for any signs. I probably looked like such a crackhead. Sure enough, though, on a few occasions I would see torches way off in the distance, in the middle of the cow paddocks, as if somebody saw all the house lights turn off and had started making their way over, at 3 a.m. Which is weird, to say the least, considering that in every direction other than towards the other houses on our road, there's nothing but bush and paddocks for a good 20 kilometers. I should add that our front door didn't properly lock, and could easily be opened by just messing with the handle a bit, so I started putting a wheelbarrow against the door, and a metal sheet behind that so that if the door opened, it would make a very loud noise that would definitely wake me up. A few weeks went by. I saw and heard absolutely nothing, so I began to get much less paranoid. I was thinking about it a lot less. One night I had gotten back from the pub, and was a bit drunk, still on my phone in the lounge room. All the lights were off, because Mum and Sis were asleep. I was just laying there texting whoever and listening to music. We have 2 cats, and on this night they were frisky and running around wildly, so when I heard the metal sheet I had in front of the door slam to the ground, I figured it was just the cats. I ignored it and walked straight past it to my room maybe a half an hour later, not even giving it a second glance. The next morning, my paranoia immediately came back in full swing. I proceeded to freak the fuck out when I saw that not only had the sheet fallen over, the door itself was ajar, and the wheelbarrow had been moved a good 6 inches as well. There's no way in hell either of my cats could have done that. The only explanation I have for this is that somebody tried to let themselves in. They heard the bang and got scared off. A few nights after this, my mom woke me up late, maybe 4 a.m. She wanted me to come out to her car with her because all of her car lights were on and she didn't want to go out by herself. We went out and turned it all off and brought the keys, which we usually leave in the car with us, inside. The car battery was dead, and we had to get our neighbor to come down with jumper cables the next day. She was certain she hadn't left the lights on, and all the doors were shut, meaning somebody went inside, pressed the button on the roof, and put the key in the ignition on accessories, and exited and closed the door, with what we think was the intention of draining the battery. She began to agree with me that somebody was lurking around the house. She told me a few things she had noticed that she just didn't want to tell me. I was already anxious about it all, and she didn't want to make it worse. When the tank water started tasting funny, she found a dead, half-decomposed possum on the grate on top of the tank. She didn't mention how she couldn't possibly see how it could have ended up there, unless it happened to die right there on that exact spot, and somehow didn't start making the water taste funny until it was so decomposed you could see its bones. How a garden rock was moved in a weird position right outside her window, as if somebody was using it to stand on to look inside. The house closest to the road had multiple dogs, and the one that I was friendly with, who lived closer, maybe 3 kilometers from us, had a gun and often shot rabbits and foxes, so that definitely makes us the easiest target. All of this made us both very concerned, and we ended up finding a house and moving about a month later. I know this is anticlimactic, but it still freaks me the fuck out, as I can't think of any other explanation than that there was somebody lurking around our house for many months. There were multiple times nobody was home all day, so if they wanted to steal from us, they very easily could have come in and taken all our stuff, but nothing was ever missing. I might just be overthinking it, but I truly think they had some very sinister intentions and were intentionally fucking with us. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. I got a big update for you guys today. It seems like the Teespring store is finally online, so if everything's going well, you should probably be able to see all of the new merchandise on the merchandise shelf below the video. I got some mugs, I got some phone cases, and I got some t-shirts for y'all with the designs on them. All of the shirt designs are under one thing, so if you click on the sweatshirts, it should take you to a page where you can order a different variety of different kinds of shirts. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. Let me know what you guys think, if it looks good, the pricing, everything. So look forward to that. As always, if you guys liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have a story that you'd like me to read, or you have a story that you'd like to send in yourself, please be sure to check the description of the video below, as it contains all of the links to my social media, including my Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, and Twitch accounts. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in, and what type of story it is, if it does have a type. Also, if you decide to send in a story, please be sure to properly format it into separate paragraphs. Thank you guys very much for that. If you guys are curious about the music used at all in this video, it's all listed in the description below, in the order of which it appears in. with links to all of the artists as well. So if you enjoy their work, please be sure to check it out and support them. Speaking of artists, as always, my friend Alan is doing the thumbnails for the videos now, so I have links to all of his art pages in the description as well. So if you like his art and you appreciate it a lot, please be sure to check out his pages and go support him, because he does some really great stuff. I think that's all for today, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.